Oslo, Norway, December 14, 1969. The temperature hovers at -12 degrees Celsius. Snow falls in thick curtains over the darkened streets of Frogner, muffling the city in an eerie silence. Inside a modest apartment on Bygdøy, Lars Bergström stands frozen before an open drawer, his hands trembling not from the cold seeping through the window pane, but from what he has just discovered. Beneath folded sweaters and summer scarves lies a Minox camera, no larger than a cigarette lighter, its metallic surface catching the dim light from the hallway. Next to it, a small notebook filled with numbers, coordinates, frequencies written in Ingrid's unmistakable handwriting. The woman he has loved for 3 years, the woman whose laughter filled his sailboat every summer, whose warmth sustained him through 2 Norwegian winters, is not who she claims to be. The realization hits him like a physical blow. His knees weaken, his vision blurs. Everything he thought he knew about his life has just collapsed into a lie. Lars Bergström is 31 years old, a senior acoustic engineer at the Royal Norwegian Navy's research facility in Horten. His work is classified, sensitive, vital to NATO's defensive posture in the North Atlantic. For the past 18 months, he has been part of a team developing advanced sonar arrays designed to detect Soviet submarines prowling the Norwegian Sea and the Barents Sea. These waters are the frontline of an invisible war, where nuclear-armed submarines from both sides play a deadly game of cat and mouse beneath the Arctic ice. The acoustic signatures, the frequency patterns, the detection ranges Lars works with daily represent some of NATO's most closely guarded secrets. A single breach could render an entire surveillance network useless. It could allow Soviet submarines to slip past Allied defenses undetected, positioning themselves within striking distance of European and American targets. The stakes could not be higher, and now, holding this camera in his shaking hands, Lars understands that he may have been the breach. He met Ingrid Lindström in the summer of 1966 at a sailing regatta in Gothenburg. She was 26, blonde, with eyes the color of the Baltic Sea on a clear day. She worked, she said, as a translator for a Swedish shipping company, traveling frequently between Stockholm and Oslo for business. They bonded immediately over their shared passion for the sea, for the wooden boats their grandfathers had built, for the coastal traditions that connected Norway and Sweden despite their separate paths through history. Their romance blossomed across borders, weekend visits turning into weeks, then months together. She loved hearing about his work, or so he thought. She asked questions that seemed innocent, curious, the natural interest of someone who cared about his life. When did the new sonar systems go operational? What frequencies did they monitor? How deep could they detect? He answered carefully at first, mindful of security protocols, but over time, trust eroded caution. She was Swedish after all, a fellow Scandinavian, practically family. Sweden was neutral, yes, but friendly. What harm could there be? Now, standing in her apartment where she has asked him to water her plants while she visits her mother in Stockholm, Lars sees the truth with brutal clarity. Every question had purpose. Every tender moment had been calculated. The sailing trips where she photographed him at the helm were cover for photographing the documents he sometimes brought home to review. The dinners where she refilled his wine glass and asked about his day were intelligence debriefings disguised as intimacy. The woman he planned to marry, the woman he imagined growing old within a cottage by the Oslofjord, is a Soviet agent. The notebook in his hands contains references to Operation Cascade, to Handler Volkov, to transmission schedules and dead drop locations in Stockholm. His breath comes in short, painful gasps. The apartment suddenly feels suffocating, the walls pressing in. He wants to scream, to weep, to pretend he never opened this drawer. But he cannot unknow what he knows. The question now is what he will do with this terrible knowledge. Lars sits on the edge of Ingrid's bed, the Minox camera resting in his palm like a venomous insect. His mind races through the past 3 years, re-examining every memory through this new, sickening lens. The weekend in Copenhagen where she insisted on visiting the harbor, asking about Danish naval facilities. The dinner party where she charmed his colleague Eric into discussing the new hydrophone arrays being installed along the continental shelf. The night she cried in his arms about her father's death, a story that now might be entirely fabricated, designed to deepen his emotional investment. Was any of it real? Did she feel anything for him at all? Or was he simply a target, a means to an end, a naive engineer too blinded by love to see the trap closing around him? The GRU, Soviet military intelligence, has been aggressively targeting NATO naval capabilities since the early 1960s. The North Atlantic is the crucial theater where any potential World War III would be decided. Soviet doctrine depends on their submarine fleet's ability to threaten Allied supply lines and project nuclear force from beneath the waves. NATO's counter-strategy relies on sophisticated acoustic surveillance networks that can track, identify, and if necessary, destroy Soviet submarines before they reach their launch positions. The sound surveillance system, known as SOSUS, consists of underwater listening posts stretching from Greenland to the United Kingdom, with critical nodes along the Norwegian coast. These systems can detect a submarine's unique acoustic signature from hundreds of miles away, turning the ocean into a transparent battlefield. But only if the frequencies, the algorithms, the technical specifications remain secret. If the Soviets know what NATO is listening for, they can engineer quieter submarines, exploit gaps in coverage, render billions of dollars and years of research obsolete. This is what Ingrid has been stealing. This is what Lars has unwittingly helped her obtain. He hears a key turning in the lock. His heart stops. She is not supposed to be back until tomorrow. Lars shoves the camera and notebook back into the drawer, his movements clumsy with panic. He stands, tries to compose his face, but knows he is failing. The door opens. Ingrid enters, snowflakes melting in her hair, carrying a bag of groceries. She sees him and smiles, that same warm, radiant smile that has sustained him through countless lonely nights. But now he sees something else beneath it, something calculating and cold. Her smile falters. She sets down the groceries slowly. Her eyes move to the drawer, still slightly open. The silence between them stretches, becomes unbearable. Finally she speaks, her voice quiet, almost sad. "Lars, what have you done?" He wants to throw the question back at her, to demand answers, to rage against the betrayal. Instead, his voice comes out broken, barely a whisper. "Who are you?" She closes her eyes, and for a moment he sees genuine pain cross her face. Or perhaps that too is performance. When she opens her eyes again, they are harder, more distant. "My name is Ingrid Lindström. That part is true. The rest is complicated." She moves to the window, looks out at the falling snow. She does not try to run, does not deny what he has found. Perhaps she is relieved, he thinks. Perhaps maintaining the lie has been its own kind of burden. She begins to speak, her voice steady, professional. She was recruited by the GRU in 1963 while studying languages at Uppsala University. Her father had been a communist, blacklisted during the Swedish purges of the 1950s, dying bitter and broken. She wanted to strike back at the systems that destroyed him, to serve something larger than herself. The Soviet Union offered purpose, direction, a way to matter. They trained her in Moscow for 8 months, taught her photography, encryption, seduction. Yes, Lars, seduction. That is the word she uses, and it cuts him deeper than any knife. She was assigned to Oslo with a simple mission: penetrate the Norwegian naval research community, identify vulnerable targets, extract technical intelligence on NATO acoustic systems. You were not the first, she says, turning to face him, but you were the most successful. Lars feels bile rising in his throat. How much? How much did you get? She tilts her head, considering almost everything. The frequency ranges for the new SOSUS arrays, the signal processing algorithms, the deployment schedules for the hydrophone networks, the acoustic signatures of NATO submarines that your facility uses for calibration. Enough to give Moscow a comprehensive picture of Allied undersea surveillance capabilities in the North Atlantic. Your work, Lars, your brilliant work, will help ensure that Soviet submarines can operate more freely, more safely. You should be proud. The words are meant to wound, and they succeed. He staggers backward, sits heavily on the bed. Thousands of sailors, entire fleets, the strategic balance of the Cold War. All compromised because he fell in love with a woman who never existed. But then Ingrid does something unexpected. She sits beside him, close enough that he can smell her perfume, the same scent she has worn since their first date. Lars, I need you to understand something. This is not finished. My handler, Colonel Volkov, he is demanding one final extraction. There is a new sonar system, something your team has been developing in absolute secrecy. A low-frequency active system that can detect submarines at unprecedented ranges, even through thermal layers and ice. The technical specifications, the frequency bands, the power outputs. Moscow wants this data within 1 week. They have made it clear that failure is not acceptable. She pauses, and when she continues, her voice carries a tremor of fear. If I do not deliver, I will be recalled to Moscow. And people who fail the GRU do not enjoy comfortable retirements. Lars stares at her, comprehension dawning. You want me to help you? You are asking me to commit treason, to betray my country, my colleagues, everything I believe in, to save you from the consequences of your own choices. The audacity of it leaves him breathless. Ingrid reaches for his hand, but he pulls away. She lets her hand fall to her lap. I am asking you to save my life. Yes. I am also telling you that if you go to Norwegian intelligence, if you expose me, the damage is already done. Everything I have sent to Moscow over the past 3 years cannot be unsent. You will destroy your career, face possible prosecution for security violations, and gain nothing. I will be arrested, probably exchanged in some spy swap, and the information will still be in Soviet hands. But if you help me complete this final task, I disappear. I leave Oslo, leave your life, and you can pretend none of this ever happened. You can move on, find someone real, have the life you deserve. The manipulation is breathtaking in its cynicism. Yet beneath it, Lars detects something else. Desperation, genuine fear, perhaps even regret. He looks at her, really looks at her, trying to find some trace of the woman he loved beneath the mask of the spy. Was any of it real, Ingrid? Anything at all? She meets his gaze, and for a long moment neither speaks. Then, so quietly he almost does not hear, she whispers, the sailing. I loved the sailing. It is not enough, not nearly enough, but it is something. A small, fragile truth in an ocean of lies. Lars stands, moves to the window, presses his forehead against the cold glass. Outside, Oslo sleeps beneath its blanket of snow. unaware that in this small apartment, the fate of naval operations across the North Atlantic hangs in the balance. He thinks of his colleagues, good men who trust him, who have shared their work and their lives with him. He thinks of the sailors aboard NATO submarines, young men from Norway, Britain, America, who depend on the systems he helps create to keep them safe in the hostile depths. He thinks of his father, a merchant marine who survived the Nazi occupation, who taught him that honor and duty matter more than personal comfort. And he thinks of Ingrid, the woman who does not exist, and the woman who might, somewhere beneath the layers of deception. The choice before him is impossible. If he refuses to help, Ingrid will likely attempt to obtain the data through other means, possibly more dangerous, more damaging. If he reports her, he faces professional ruin and personal devastation, and the intelligence she has already stolen remains in enemy hands. If he helps her, he becomes a traitor, complicit in an act that could cost lives, undermine his nation's security, and haunt him for the rest of his days. But she would live. The woman he loved or thought he loved would survive. Is that worth the price? Can love, even betrayed love, justify betrayal? Lars turns from the window. I need time. I need to think. Ingrid nods. You have 3 days. Volkov expects contact by December 17th. After that, he will assume I have been compromised and initiate emergency protocols. She stands, approaches him cautiously. Lars, I know you hate me right now. I understand. But please try to remember the good times. They were not all lies, some of it was real. More than you know, he wants to believe her. God help him, part of him still wants to believe her. Instead, he walks to the door, pauses with his hand on the knob. If I do this, you disappear. Completely. I never see you again, never hear from you again. You become a ghost. She nods, her eyes glistening. That is the deal. He leaves without another word, stepping out into the frozen Oslo night, the snow stinging his face like tiny accusations. The next 2 days are torture. Lars goes through the motions at work, attending meetings, reviewing data, all while his mind churns with impossible calculations. He barely sleeps. Food tastes like ash. He considers going to Norwegian intelligence, rehearses the conversation in his mind. There is a woman. I have been compromised. But each time he imagines the aftermath. The interrogations, the suspicion, the end of his career. Worse, he imagines Ingrid in a Moscow prison or simply vanished, erased by the same system she served. Does she deserve his protection? Absolutely not. Does he owe her anything? Nothing, yet the heart does not operate on logic. Love, even poisoned love, has its own terrible gravity. On December 16th, Lars makes his decision. He will not help her steal the new sonar data. But neither will he turn her in. Instead, he will give her something else, something that might satisfy her handlers while minimizing the damage. He has access to older technical reports, already outdated, soon to be declassified. He will alter dates, forge headers, make them appear current and valuable. It is still a crime, still a betrayal, but a lesser one. A compromise between honor and mercy, between duty and love. He tells himself this is the right choice, the only choice. But late at night, alone in his apartment, he is not so sure. He arranges to meet Ingrid on December 17th at their old spot, a bench overlooking the Oslofjord where they used to watch the sailboats in summer. Now the water is dark and cold, ice forming along the shore. She arrives precisely on time, her face pale, her eyes searching his. He hands her an envelope. She opens it, scans the documents inside. Her expression shifts from hope to confusion to something like disappointment. This is not what Volkov wants. I know, Lars says. It is what I am willing to give. Tell him it is all you could obtain. Tell him I became suspicious, that you had to break contact. Tell him whatever you need to tell him, but this is all there is. Ingrid stares at the papers, then at him. You are trying to save me. Even now, after everything, you are trying to save me. He does not answer. She folds the documents carefully, places them in her bag. This will not be enough, Lars. Volkov will know these are outdated. I will face consequences. He feels his resolve wavering but holds firm. Then face them. You made your choices. I have made mine. I will not give you the new sonar data. I will not let you endanger more lives, but I will not destroy you either. This is the best I can do. She stands, and for a moment he thinks she will argue, plead, try once more to manipulate him. Instead, she leans down, kisses his forehead gently. You are a good man, Lars Bergström. Too good for this world, too good for me. I am sorry. For what it is worth, I am truly sorry. Then she walks away, her figure disappearing into the winter twilight. He watches until she is gone, feeling something inside him break cleanly, finally. The woman he loved is gone. Perhaps she never existed at all, but he has kept his honor, or most of it. He has protected his country, or tried to. It will have to be enough. 2 weeks later, Lars receives a visit at work from 2 men in dark suits. They identify themselves as Norwegian intelligence officers. They have been monitoring Ingrid Lindström for 6 months, they explain. They know about her GRU connections, her intelligence activities, her relationship with Lars. They know about the meeting on December 17th. They know about the documents he provided. Lars feels the floor drop away beneath him. He is finished. His career, his freedom, everything is over. But then the senior officer, a man named Hansen, says something unexpected. The documents you gave her were clever. Outdated material disguised as current intelligence. It will take Moscow months to realize they have been deceived. By then, the new sonar systems will be operational, and the old frequency data will be useless. You protected classified information while appearing to cooperate with a hostile agent. That took courage and quick thinking. Lars stares at them, uncomprehending. You knew, the entire time. Hansen nods. We have been running a counterintelligence operation. Lindström was under surveillance. We allowed the relationship to continue because we wanted to understand her network, her methods, her handlers. You were never the target, Mr. Bergström. You were the bait, and you performed admirably. Lars feels a wave of emotions, anger at being used, relief at not facing prosecution, confusion about what any of this means. What happened to Ingrid? Hansen's expression darkens. She attempted to cross into Sweden on December 20th. Swedish security services arrested her at the border. She is currently being held in Stockholm, awaiting trial. The Soviets will likely negotiate an exchange. She will return to Moscow, face debriefing, possibly punishment for the operation's failure. That is beyond our control. Lars sits down heavily, so it is over. Hansen shakes his head. For you, yes. For her, no. For the Cold War, never. This is one operation, one agent, one small victory in a conflict that spans the globe and will continue for years, perhaps decades. You did your duty, Mr. Bergström. You should be proud. But Lars does not feel proud. He feels hollow, used, grieving for something that never truly existed. The officers leave, and he returns to his work, to the endless columns of acoustic data, the frequency analyzes, the sonar profiles. The sea keeps its secrets. The submarines prowl in darkness. The war continues, invisible and relentless. Months pass. Spring comes to Oslo, melting the snow, bringing life back to the fjord. Lars tries to move forward to rebuild his life. He dates occasionally, but finds it difficult to trust, difficult to open himself to vulnerability again. His colleagues notice the change in him, the new guardedness, but attribute it to stress, to the demands of classified work. They do not know the truth. Only Lars and the intelligence officers know what really happened that winter. And Ingrid, wherever she is now, behind the Iron Curtain, facing whatever fate awaits failed agents. He wonders sometimes if she thinks of him, if she regrets the choices that led her down this path. He wonders if the sailing really was real, if in those moments on the water, wind in their faces, sun on the waves, they were simply two people who loved the sea, uncomplicated by ideology and espionage and the terrible machinery of the Cold War. The story of Lars Bergström and Ingrid Lindström is one small thread in the vast tapestry of Cold War intelligence operations. Thousands of such relationships unfolded across Europe during those decades, romances weaponized, trust exploited, love turned into a tool of statecraft. The human cost is incalculable. Broken hearts, shattered lives, the corrosion of the very capacity for intimacy and connection. The Cold War was fought not just with missiles and tanks, but with lies and seduction, with the systematic destruction of the bonds that make us human. Lars survived, but he was changed, marked by the experience in ways that would never fully heal. The acoustic systems he helped develop remained secure, contributing to NATO's naval superiority throughout the 1970s and beyond. Soviet submarines never gained the advantage that Ingrid's operation sought to provide. In that sense, the mission failed. But the damage to one man's soul, to his ability to love and trust, that damage was complete and irreversible. This is the true cost of espionage. The price paid not in dollars or rubles, but in human suffering, in the slow erosion of everything that makes life worth living. The Cold War is over now, the Soviet Union dissolved, the ideological struggle concluded. But the scars remain, carried by men like Lars Bergström, who learned too late that in the world of spies, nothing is ever as it seems, and love itself can be the most dangerous weapon of all.